Admiral Byrd's diary, Operation Highjump, expedition to enter Earth. We're going to talk about all of it. I'm actually going to share with you the entire alleged diary of Admiral Byrd, where he describes not only going to enter Earth via North Pole, but also South Pole. And not only that, but I had a wonderful opportunity to speak with the gentleman that went to Antarctica with Admiral Byrd in 1947, Robert Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for reaching out to me. He passed at 102, and I had a chance to speak with him before. What a nice guy. And I asked him about Operation Highjump. So I've got that uploaded on Patreon now. I had to do a bunch of editing because the audio was terrible on it. So I had to clean it up so it's understandable. But if you want to listen to that, it's available on Patreon. And I will eventually make it available on YouTube as well. It was a great conversation that we had. I think we talked for about 30, 40 minutes or so. But anyway, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to Patreon for that. But Robert explained what happened, what he talked about was fascinating. And when you listen to the diary, the alleged diary of Admiral Byrd, this is just incredible. So I'm not 100% that this is a legit diary from Admiral Byrd, but people say that it is. So, hey, maybe it is. But it describes him actually going inside of the Earth and meeting a highly advanced civilization in Earth with highly advanced technology, saying, hey, you need to go tell your people, you need to go tell your personnel that you're working with that they need to quit nukes. They need to knock it off. And anyway, so you'll want to listen to this in full. It is amazing. And definitely want to jump on over and listen to us on Patreon as well. Conversation that I had with Robert. And also, I wanted to let you know real quick that if you are in, I've had a great response from the webinars that I've been doing. So I've been doing free webinars with my friend Jay Matta. He's the founder of Gnostic TV. And we're helping people profit and make money doing what they love to do. And also, if you're at a point in your life where you're like, yeah, this is okay, but I want to do something new, you definitely want to check out these webinars because there are so many opportunities right now, especially right now. There's a few things in particular that right now is the time you want to get into this. So send me an email, leakproject@gmail.com. And you can also send me a text, 970-616-5677. So, all right. You'll thank me later. Robert, and the conversation I had with him was amazing. This diary of Admiral Byrd is amazing. And I also just want to give you a quick rundown. So Admiral Byrd, a pioneering American aviator, polar explorer, organizer of polar logistics, aircraft flights in which he served as a navigator and expedition leader, crossed the Atlantic Ocean, a segment of the Arctic Ocean, and a segment of the Antarctic Plateau. He is also known for discovering Mount Sidley, the largest dormant volcano in Antarctica. Byrd claimed to be the first to reach both the North and South Poles by air. However, there is some controversy as to whether or not Byrd was actually the first person to reach the North Pole. It is generally believed that the distance Byrd claimed to fly was longer than possible because of the fuel range of his airplane. He was also a recipient of the Medal of Honor, the United States Armed Forces' highest military decoration, and the Navy Cross, the second highest honor for valor given by the U.S. Navy. So, wow, definitely high accolades. And Mr. Johnson, Chief Bob Johnson. And also, I want to thank the gentleman that sent me that sent me Chief Johnson's number. Thank you for sending me Chief Bob's number. Chief Bob Johnson. So let me tell you a little bit about Robert. As a teenager, he traveled to Antarctica on a thick-hulled wooden ship with Admiral Richard Byrd. He passed Sunday in Jacksonville. This was a little while ago. He was the last survivor of any of Byrd's pre-World War II polar journeys, which caught the public imagination and made the explorer a much decorated national hero. His death was confirmed by Stan Jordan, a family friend and former state representative and Duval County School Board chairman. Listen to this. Robert Johnson, at 100 years old, so back on his 100th birthday, that was 81 years after his first expedition to Antarctica via wooden sailboat. Think about that for a minute. What a legend. What an absolute legend. So at 19, Mr. Johnson was the youngest member of Byrd's 1939 expedition to Antarctica aboard the USS Bear, a 19th century dual steam-powered and sailing ship. He went back with Byrd in 1946 for Operation Highjump, during which he parachuted onto the polar ice. He was later said seemed to him the quietest place on Earth in a still-hold icebreaker. He also joined another U.S. Navy expedition to Antarctica, Operation Windmill, in 1948. Goes on to say, everything we did in that ice down there was exciting because it was never the same thing twice. Trying to explore and going in and out of these inlets, Mr. Johnson said in 2011 Times Union interview, I can remember 5 times in his first expedition when I didn't know if I was going to get out of the ice. The son of chief warrant officer in San Diego, Mr. Johnson was a Sea Scout who trained on sailing ships as a teen. The summer he turned 16, he was one of the Sea Scouts aboard the Pacific Queen, which was a 300-foot square rigger for a 15-day cruise. After the ship was proclaimed, the expedition turned into one of 67 days with its crew living on severe rations as rescuers frantically researched for the ship. And then 2 years later, what does he do? He's like, well, I'm going to join the Navy because I'm a tough dude. So he joins the Navy 2 years later. He serves on a battleship before he volunteered for Byrd's 1939 expedition. His experience sailing helped him land one of the coveted positions. Wow. So he was in the Navy from 37 to 56. He retired from the Naval Station Mayport as a chief bosun's mate. He then worked for the Postal Service until 1990. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so this is the gentleman that I talked to. Admiral Byrd is a super legend also, and they go on Operation Highjump. So what is Operation Highjump? Operation Highjump is when, from 1946, 1947, the United States Navy operation to establish the Antarctic research base, Little America. The operation was organized by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, Jr., USN officer in charge, Task Force 68, and led by Rear Admiral Ethan Eric Larson. The USN commanding officer, Task Force 68, Operation Highjump, commenced August 26, 1946, and ended late February 1947. This Task Force 68 includes 4,700 men, 70 ships, and 33 aircraft. Think about that. Think about that. To Antarctica, 4,700 men, 70 ships, 33 aircraft. 33. Wow. And it goes on to say training personnel and testing equipment in frigid conditions, consolidating and extending the United States sovereignty over the largest practicable area of the Antarctic continent, publicly denied as a goal before the expedition ended, determining the feasibility of establishing, maintaining, and utilizing bases in the Antarctic and investigating possible base sites, developing techniques for establishing, maintaining, and utilizing air bases on ice, with particular attention to later applicability of such techniques to operations in interior Greenland, where conditions are comparable to those in the Antarctic, amplifying existing stores of knowledge of electromagnetic, geological, geographic, hydrographic, and meteorological propagation conditions in the area. Yes, I know. Say that really fast. Supplementary objectives of the Nanak expedition, a smaller equivalent conducted off eastern Greenland. So that's just a little bit about the intensity of Operation Highjump. Now, are you ready? Are you ready for his diary? You've probably been ready for like 10 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and this is going to read it to you in full. And I want to hear your comments in the comments section, what you think about this. And definitely send me a text, send me an email for that free webinar that's coming up. You'll be glad you did. I mean, there's so many opportunities right now. Some awesome opportunities. And let's get into it right now. Yeah. Hello. Admiral Richard E. Byrd, diary full. An incredible and fascinating story. Realization, Admiral Richard B. Byrd's diary. February, March 1947, the exploration flight over the North Pole, the inner Earth. My secret diary. I must write this diary in secrecy and obscurity. It concerns my Arctic flight of the 19th day of February in the year of 1947. There comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance, and one must accept the inevitability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation at this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny, but I must do my duty and record here for all to read one day. In a world of greed and exploitation, of certain of mankind can no longer suppress that which is truth. Flight log, Base Camp Arctic, 1947, 6.0 hours. All preparations are complete for our flight northward, and we are airborne with full fuel tanks at 6:10 hours, 6.20 hours. The fuel mixture on starboard engine seems too rich. Adjustment made and Pratt Whitneys are running smoothly. 7:30 hours, air radio check with base camp. All is well and radio reception is normal. 7:40 hours. Note slight oil leak in starboard engine. Oil pressure indicator seems normal, however. Both 3-light Boysen, 8.0 hours. Slight turbulence noted from easterly direction at altitude of 2321 feet. Correction to 1700 feet. No further turbulence, but tailwind increases. Slight adjustment in throttle controls. Aircraft performing very well now. 8:15 hours. Radio check with base camp. Situation normal. 8:30 hours. Turbulence encountered again. Increase altitude to 2,900 feet. Smooth flight conditions again. 9.10 hours. Vast ice and snow below. Note coloration of yellowish nature and disperse in a linear pattern. Altering course for a better examination of this color pattern below. Note reddish or purple color also. Circle this area 2 full turns and return to assigned compass heading. Position check made again to base camp and relay information concerning colorations in the ice and snow below. 9.10 hours, both magnetic and gyro compasses beginning to gyrate and wobble. We are unable to hold our heading by instrumentation, take bearing with sun compass, yet all seems well. The controls are seemingly slow to respond and have sluggish quality, but there is no indication of icing. 9:15 hours. In the distance is what appears to be mountains. 9:49 hours. 29 minutes elapsed flight time from the first sighting of the mountains. It is no illusion. They are mountains and consisting of a small range that I have never seen before. 9.55 hours. Altitude changed to 2950 feet, encountering strong turbulence again. 10.0 hours. We are crossing over the small mountain range and still proceeding northward as best as can be ascertained. Beyond the mountain range is what appears to be a valley with a small river or stream running through the center portion. There should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal here. We should be over ice and snow. To the port side are great forests growing on the mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back and forth. 10.5 hours. I alter altitude to 1,400 feet and execute a sharp left. Turn to better examine the valley below. It is green with either moss or a type of tight-knit grass. The light here seems different. I cannot see the sun anymore. We make another left turn and we spot what seems to be a large animal of some kind below us. It appears to be an elephant. No, it looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible. Yet there it is. Decrease altitude to 1,000 feet and take binoculars to better examine the animal. It is confirmed. It is definitely a mammoth-like animal. Report this to base camp. 10.30 hours. Encountering more rolling green hills now. The external temperature indicator reads 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Continuing on our heading now. Navigation instruments seem normal now. I am puzzled over their actions. Attempt to contact base camp. Radio is not functioning. 11:30 hours. The countryside below is more level and normal, if I may use that word. Ahead we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. Aircraft seems light and oddly buoyant. The controls refuse to respond. My God, off our port and starboard wings are a strange type of aircraft. They are closing rapidly alongside. They are disc-shaped and have a radiant quality to them. They are
Close enough now to see the markings on them. It is a type of swastika. This is fantastic. Where are we? What has happened? I tug at the controls again. They will not respond. We are caught in an invisible vice grip of some type. 11:35 hours. Our radio crackles and a voice comes through in English, with what perhaps is a slight Nordic or Germanic accent. The message is, "Welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land you in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, Admiral, you are in good hands." I note the engines of our plane have stopped running. The aircraft is under some strange control and is now turning itself. The controls are useless. 11:40 hours, another radio message received. We begin the landing process now, and in moments the plane shudders slightly and begins a descent as though caught in some great unseen elevator. The downward motion is negligible, and we touch down with only a slight jolt. 11:45 hours. I am making a hasty last entry in the flight log. Several men are approaching on foot toward our aircraft. They are tall with blonde hair. In the distance is a large shimmering city pulsating with rainbow hues of color. I do not know what is going to happen now, but I see no signs of weapons on those approaching. I hear now a voice ordering me by name to open the cargo door. I comply. End log from this point. I write all the following events here from memory. It defies the imagination and would seem all but madness if it had not happened. The radioman and I are taken from the aircraft, and we are received in a most cordial manner. We were then boarded on a small platform-like conveyance with no wheels. It moves us toward the glowing city with great swiftness. As we approach, the city seems to be made of a crystal material. Soon we arrive at a large building that is a type I have never seen before. It appears to be right out of the design board of Frank Lloyd Wright, or perhaps more correctly, out of a Buck Rogers setting. We are given some type of warm beverage, which tasted like nothing I have ever savored before. It is delicious. After about 10 minutes, two of our wondrous appearing hosts come to our quarters and announce that I am to accompany them. I have no choice but to comply. I leave my radio man behind and we walk a short distance and enter into what seems to be an elevator. We descend downward for some moments. The machine stops and the door lifts silently upward. We then proceed down a long hallway that is lit by a rose-colored light that seems to be emanating from the very walls themselves. One of the beings motions for us to stop before a great door. Over the door is an inscription that I cannot read. The great door slides noiselessly open, and I am beckoned to enter. One of my hosts speaks. "Have no fear, Admiral. You are to have an audience with the master." I step inside, and my eyes adjust to the beautiful coloration that seems to be filling the room completely. Then I begin to see my surroundings. What greeted my eyes is the most beautiful sight of my entire existence. It is in fact too beautiful and wondrous to describe. It is exquisite and delicate. I do not think there exists a human term that can describe it in any detail with justice. My thoughts are interrupted in a cordial manner by a warm, rich voice of melodious quality. "I bid you welcome to our domain, Admiral." I see a man with delicate features and with the etching of years upon his face. He is seated at a long table. He motions me to sit down in one of the chairs. After I am seated, he places his fingertips together and smiles. He speaks softly again and conveys the following. "We have let you enter here because you are of noble character and well known on the surface world, Admiral." Surface world. I half gasp under my breath. "Yes," the master replies with a smile, "you are in the domain of the Ariani, the inner world of the earth. We shall not long delay your mission, and you will be safely escorted back to the surface and for a distance beyond. But now, Admiral, I shall tell you why you have been summoned here. Our interest rightly begins just after your race exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. It was at that alarming time we sent our flying machines, the Fluggelrats, to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. That is, of course, past history now, my dear Admiral, but I must continue on. You see, we have never interfered before in your race's wars and barbarity, but now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for man, namely, that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the powers of your world, and yet they do not heed. Now you have been chosen to be witness here that our world does exist. You see, our culture and science is many thousands of years beyond your race." "Admiral," I interrupted, "but what does this have to do with me, sir?" The master's eyes seemed to penetrate deeply into my mind, and after studying me for a few moments, he replied, "Your race has now reached the point of no return. For there are those among you who would destroy your very world rather than relinquish their power as they know it. I nodded, and the master continued. In 1945 and afterward, tried to contact your race, but our efforts were met with hostility. Our flagell rats were fired upon. Yes, even pursued with malice and animosity by your fighter planes. So now I say to you, my son, there is a great storm gathering in your world, a black fury that will not spend itself for many years. There will be no answer in your arms. There will be no safety in your science. It may rage on until every flower of your culture is trampled, and all human things are leveled in vast chaos. Your recent war was only a prelude of what is yet to come for your race. We here see it more clearly with each hour. Do you say I am mistaken? No. I answer, it happened once before. The Dark Ages came, and they lasted for more than 500 years. Yes, my son, replied the master, the Dark Ages that will come now for your race will cover the earth like a pall. But I believe that some of your race will live through the storm. Beyond that, I cannot say. We see at a great distance a new world stirring from the ruins of your race, seeking its lost and legendary treasures, and they will be here, my son, safe in our keeping. When that time arrives, we shall come forward again to help revive your culture and your race. Perhaps by then you will have learned the futility of war and its strife, and after that time, certain of your culture and science will be returned for your race to begin. You, my son, are to return to the surface world with this message. With these closing words, our meeting seemed at an end. I stood for a moment as in a dream, but yet I knew this was reality, and for some strange reason I bowed slightly, either out of respect or humility. I do not know which. Suddenly I was again aware that the two beautiful hosts who had brought me here were again at my side. This way, Admiral motioned one. I turned once more before leaving and looked back toward the master. A gentle smile was etched on his delicate and ancient face. Farewell, my son, he spoke. Then he gestured with a lovely, slender hand a motion of peace, and our meeting was truly ended. Quickly, we walked back through the great door of the master's chamber and once again entered into the elevator. The door slid silently downward, and we were at once going upward. One of my hosts spoke again. We must now make haste, Admiral, as the master desires to delay you no longer on your scheduled timetable, and you must return with his message to your race. I said nothing. All of this was almost beyond belief, and once again my thoughts were interrupted as we stopped. I entered the room and was again with my radioman. He had an anxious expression on his face. As I approached, I said, "It is all right, Howie. It is all right." The two beings motioned us toward the awaiting conveyance. We boarded, and soon arrived back at the aircraft. The engines were idling, and we boarded immediately. The whole atmosphere seemed charged now with a certain air of urgency. After the cargo door was closed, the aircraft was immediately lifted by that unseen force until we reached an altitude of 2,700 feet. Two of the aircraft were alongside for some distance, guiding us on our return way. I must state here the airspeed indicator registered no reading, yet we were moving along at a very rapid rate. 2.15 hours. A radio message comes through. "We are leaving you now, Admiral. Your controls are free." Of Wiedersehen. We watched for a moment as the Flugelrats disappeared into the pale blue sky. The aircraft suddenly felt as though caught in a sharp downdraft for a moment. We quickly recovered her control. We do not speak for some time. Each man has his thoughts. Entry in flight log continues. 2.20 hours. We are again over vast areas of ice and snow and approximately 27 minutes from base camp. We radio them. They respond. We report all conditions normal. Base camp expresses relief at a reestablished contact. 3.0 hours. We land smoothly at base camp. I have a mission, Anag and Tries, March 11, 1947. I have just attended a staff meeting at the Pentagon. I have stated fully my discovery and the message from the master. All is duly recorded. The president has been advised. I am now detained for several hours, 6 hours, 39 minutes, to be exact. I am interviewed intently by top security forces and a medical team. It was an ordeal. I am placed under strict control via the national security provisions of this United States of America. I am ordered to remain silent in regard to all that I have learned on the behalf of humanity. Incredible. I am reminded that I am a military man and I must obey orders. 30th 456, final entry. These last few years elapsed since 1947 have not been kind. I now make my final entry in this singular diary. In closing, I must state that I have faithfully kept this matter secret as directed all these years. It has been completely against my values of moral right. Now, I seem to sense the long night coming on, and this secret will not die with me, but as all truth shall, it will triumph, and so it shall. This can be the only hope for mankind. I have seen the truth, and it has quickened my spirit, and has set me free. I have done my duty toward the monstrous military-industrial complex. Now, the long night begins to approach, but there shall be no end. Just as the long night of the Arctic ends, the brilliant sunshine of truth shall come again, and those who are of darkness shall fall in its light. For I have seen that land beyond the pole, that center of the great unknown.
Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Okay, so what are your thoughts now that you've heard the diary in full? And the first thing I thought of when I read the end of it was how his discontent towards the military-industrial complex seems to reflect President Eisenhower, or at least the speech that he gave had a very similar outlook. And I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical, but at the same time, it's very interesting, and it's definitely worth looking into more. So with that in mind, let's say that this is true. That certainly changes the perception of extraterrestrials and flying saucers, especially those that were seen after the nuclear testing started in the late 40s. And I wonder what they're doing now down there, if they're still there. What do you think they're doing? So thanks for watching, and I know you're going to want to listen to the conversation I had with Chief Johnson. What an awesome guy. Such a nice person. Him and his wife, just beautiful, lovely people, and very interesting what he had to say about Operation Highjump, because he went to Antarctica with Admiral Byrd, and he was out there the first time in a wooden boat, like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. How cool is that? And then he went back to Antarctica after Operation Highjump. Talk about a tough dude. No wonder he lived to be 102 or 103. Absolute legend status. So thanks everybody. I'll see you on Patreon. Be excellent to each other and be the change the world needs to see. It starts with you.